Hello and welcome to ET Now Startup Central, India's first and only daily show dedicated to startups, entrepreneurship and technology. I'm Chandra Srikanth coming to you live from India's startup capital Bengaluru, and we kick it off with a big voice from Silicon Valley. We are talking about Uber's founder and CEO Travis Kalanick, who is speaking in the national capital. Let's toss to him right away.
Cars on our system. More cars on our system means that we cover the city better and better over the years. It also means your pickup times go down. And so the dark blue there is areas where you're going to get less than 5-minute pickup times, and the light blue is 10. And so as it becomes more and more reliable, you start to ask yourself, do I need to own a car? And across all of India and really around the world, we're seeing people just give up their cars. It starts with giving up their second car, and eventually they give up their first car. And then when that happens, we're starting to give that land back to the people and back to the cities. We're starting to use those roads way more efficiently. And there's still a lot more to do. This is a map of New York. You can see the same thing happening there over the years. And so as it gets working better and better, it starts to work well with mass transit systems. This is London right here. Outside of the city center, 40% of all of our rides are within 200 meters of a tube stop. And so people use the tube to get close to home, and they use Uber for that last mile. And this is how these different transportation systems are complementary. And when it becomes reliable, it significantly reduces the anxiety around getting back home. And by the way, that anxiety leads to what? A car purchase. So when people have these reliable options to get to where they need to go when they need to go there, when they can just push a button and get a ride to wherever, they don't have to own a car anymore. And the streets then get clearer. And of course, the air gets clearer too. And so this is a picture of a loop basically it's the tube stops in London, in the central city. What happened was they didn't have what's called night tube, which is the tube closed down normally pretty early in the evening. And then if people who are out participating in nightlife really had nowhere to go, and so they typically use Uber. So a lot of folks thought that when the night tube opened up that Uber's business was gonna go down, and there's a lot of snarky articles, etc., about that. But what we found was when the night tube lit up, our activity in the central city went down. But the activity on our system in the outer area of London went way up. And the reason why is because people used the night tube, and then they used us for the last mile. And so again, it speaks to that complementary nature of transportation systems and why they're sort of symbiotic on each other. And so as we got really big in San Francisco, our first city, we started to think, well, what if two people are taking the same ride at the same time? Is there a way, instead of two separate cars taking two people, is there a way we could get two people in the same car? What if you push a button and the Uber comes, and you open the door and your neighbor is already in the car, going to basically the same place, two people taking almost the same trip at the same time? Then you're really taking cars off of the road because, well, on that second person, well, it's two cars being one, but what about the third and the fourth person in that carpool? And so now you have this on-demand carpooling system that, because of technology, because of GPS, because of all of these things coming together, you could really take a large fraction of the cars off of the road. And right now, 40% of the rides in San Francisco are Uber pool rides. And so here is a map, or sorry, let's call it a visualization or a graphic of what happened in San Francisco. On the left was our total Uber trips in San Francisco before Uber pool, without Uber pool. And on the right is the traffic, the Uber traffic in San Francisco on those same trips once Uber pool was introduced. This is a funny thing, almost non-intuitive, when you can use cars to reduce the number of cars in a city. And again, when that traffic goes lower, your air gets cleaner. And when when the system, when you start doing Uber Pool, the price goes down, which then gets more people using it. It means less people in cars, less people drunk driving, all of those things. And so we've seen a lot of benefits here, 312 million miles saved just on Uber Pool. Over 6 million gallons of gasoline not used, not spewed into the atmosphere. And 55,000 metric tons of CO2 that we've spared the air of. And so really this is about, I wanted to show this side of Uber, the side about serving cities and making them greener, making them better places to live. Really it's about an urban mobility story. What happens when you give people the ability to efficiently get around their city, you can also make your city a better place. And it's just the beginning for us, but I like to say even in a city like Delhi, we may be 5 to 10 years out from no traffic in Delhi. And I know everybody looks at me and says, no, but what happens when technology, so when a technology that we like to say Uber's bits and atoms, when something that affects the physical world can grow in the same way that a Google or a Facebook or some of those big technology companies does, instead of just affecting how we communicate, it's going to affect how our world works. And it can do it at the same scale where dramatic changes can happen very quickly. And so like a lot of the ad system, sort of the ad-supported systems out there, their business model is to take a little slice of your time and sell it. Uber is very much about giving you your time back, and in many ways giving your city back. So thank you very much. I'm actually looking forward, this is one of my favorite parts of my day, we'll be talking with Amitabh Kant. But thank you very much, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Travis. Thanks for that. We thought it would be interesting to show you a glimpse of the future. Can you please invite Mr. Amitabh Kant, the man behind Make in India, Startup India, now the CEO of Niti Aayog. You know, I like to say that the only Kant is in his name, and everything else you can do. So he's been a disruptive force in the government in making the impossible happen. So over to you, Mr. Kant.
So Travis, welcome to India. Let me start off by asking you, what makes you the greatest disruptionist in the world? Last time you came to India, you disrupted the government of India by landing up without a visa.
This is not a well-known story that I was hoping would continue to not be well-known. I had the dates on a visa, on an Indian visa, they go the opposite direction as if it were in the US. So November 12th would be 11/12 in the US, would be 12/11 here. There was a misunderstanding, and I flew from Beijing into Delhi without a visa, and that was a scary situation. And thank you, Amitabh, for letting me actually enter the country.
No, great pleasure. Well, I got woken up at about 2:30 in the night, and I had to wake up the Home Secretary and the Director IB to get him in. He was put back on the plane, and he was being shunted back to China, which he, so we had to get him on because he was here for Startup India at that point of time.
How many people have been able to enter?
You're the only one. So you're getting into weddings and you're getting into cuisine. All new areas of growth.
Yeah.
What is the kind of disruption you will cause to people's weddings?
Well, look, we did, I don't know if it's disruption. Well, it's disruption to the wedding industry. Let me explain. This is something we do once a year. We do on-demand weddings once a year. I married 8 couples in a single day. And that's wild. Could you imagine you're special someone, maybe you're talking about getting married, maybe the guy's resisting a little bit, but your significant other just pushes a button and 5 minutes later you're getting married? That's an intense situation.
Oh, fascinating. Well, that's fascinating.
Now, Uber Eats, though, is like a real business. It's something we do all the time, and we're rolling it out in more cities. It really started in the U.S. and very quickly has expanded beyond that. And very much we think about Uber as being, our business is delivering a car in 5 minutes. But once you deliver a car in 5 minutes, there's a lot of things you can deliver in 5 minutes. And so we really started getting into the logistics of moving things, and in this case, moving food, really, really efficiently, so that food delivery, we're sort of changing that industry a bit.
Okay. Tell me if you were really made in charge of the planning process of India.
Yes.
And
I know exactly what I would do.
you were asked to draft out a 15-year vision plan on urban mobility.
Yes.
What will you do? I mean, if you were to look at the next 7 years and then the next 15 years, what kind of radical disruption India needs?
The first executive order I would take would be to hire Amitabh Kant as my number 2 in charge. I mean, this is something you know a lot more about than I do. But I think what I've seen in our experience in the 3 years, 3.5 years we've been here in India, look, when you bring innovation to a market, there are incumbents who like the old way of doing things, but there's something new, and when the new thing happens, it means substantial progress. And I told that story here, the Uber kind of progress. But every new technology brings that, and what we've seen is that, in many ways under your stewardship, the country of India has really started to embrace our kinds of innovation, not just Uber, but many different forms, and have really seen that leapfrog happen. So, look, I think there's a lot of really interesting maneuvering that has to happen to sort of bring the old into the new. But I think having a philosophy that is about embracing the future and the positive things that come with it is a big deal. And I don't know how I could do it better than what you guys are already doing. We see resistance in different places, but there are a lot of places around the world that are a lot harder to do business in than India.
Yeah.
And I think it's getting easier and easier, and it's inspiring our team here on the ground, the folks who run Uber India, the sons and daughters of India. They're making their cities better. It's inspiring them to do great work and to really expand our ability to serve cities.
So you're operating in about 500 cities across the world.
Yeah.
But tell me, I mean, you claim that you're not a cab company, you're not a taxi company. You don't want any regulations of any kind. You're totally, you want to break any kind of regulations. I mean, how can India not have any regulations? This is unheard of in India.
Amitabh, do not believe everything you read on the internet. Okay? All right? We are okay with rules as long as those rules are bending towards the people and towards progress.
Yeah.
And sometimes those rules are about protecting the old way of doing things, and that slows the future down. That slows all the great things that I just spoke about. It slows that kind of progress down. So we're okay with rules as long as they are oriented and their true intention is to bring progress.
So tell me, I mean, instead of just killing the Kali Pili or the yellow-black taxis, can you not co-opt them in the system?
Look, if you have a car and you want to serve your city, you should be able to. And you should be able to without constraints on, okay, how many autos are there in a city and what is the constraint? Or how many black and yellows are there in a city? And in many ways, the sort of regulated cartel that we see in some cities, maybe not in India, but maybe in certain cities here, that regulated monopoly that exists today, called the taxi industry, wants there to be a limited number of cars. In New York today, there are 13,250 taxis right around there.
Yeah.
How many taxis were there 70 years ago? Pretty close to 13,250. Maybe it was like 13,240.
Okay.
Right? And so how much has New York changed in the last 70 years? A whole bunch. How much has the number of taxis changed? Almost zero. And that's how you get in this rut of not being able to serve cities. And so we have to find ways to allow that expansion of people being able to serve, and we have to allow ways to get the price down if you can make it efficient to do so. And so the only things you'll see Uber ever, get animated about or riled up about is one, flexible price, the lowest cost reliable ride, and two, flexible supply. That means if somebody wants to work and they're qualified, let them work.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your competition in India, Ola. This guy, Bhavish, is a pretty smart guy. I mean, is he giving some kind of a run for money to Uber in India, in some cities?
Look, I think, first, competition makes you better. It keeps you honest, and it pushes you to continue to innovate. And so, look, Uber, we are a very innovative company. Pretty much most of what you see in the ride-sharing space was something somebody at our company invented. But they're a fierce competitor.
So you like competition?
A, we like competition because look at what we saw in the industry before us. But B, I think it ultimately ends up serving customers better.
Yeah. So I mean, if you love competition so much, why didn't you take the competition head on in China?
We did.
Why did you merge?
Because we were losing $200 million a month.
Okay. So merger was a better strategy.
Yeah, it was a great strategy.
Okay. So you made good money there?
Well, what happened is, so we invested about $2 billion in our China business. Post the merger, it was that investment was worth $7 billion, and we did that in about 2 years.
Okay.
So that's the failure we had in China.
Okay. Do you envisage any kind of such merger in India in the future?
No. We are.
You're losing in India as well.
We are losing in India, but we see the path towards profitability, and we feel good about that path. So we're pretty optimistic that we're going to be here for the long run, but we fight and really push every day to continue to serve riders and drivers better. And look, we have competition. Look, the bigger thing about competition here in India for us is car ownership. Is that Uber works best when we're so reliable and so efficient that you don't want to own a car. And until we're more reliable, like you get in your car, you turn it on, it just works most of the time.
Okay.
Right? When we're more reliable than getting in your car and we're more cost effective than owning one, then you no longer will own one. And that's the real competition. But there are categories like ride sharing where we compete with Ola every day.
Okay. So Travis, tell us, I mean, you're operating in 500 cities. I mean, nobody does that. A great experience. What can we learn from you as far as congestion, parking, better environment? I mean, how can we improve the quality of air in Delhi?
Look, every city goes through this sort of industrialization process. My home city, Los Angeles, and when I'm in India, I say it's like Mumbai except in North America. Right? Bollywood, Hollywood. You go back 40, 50 years and look at photos of Los Angeles. They look like Delhi in terms of the pollution in the air. And so when you go through that hyper-industrialization, you go through that phase where you see lots of smog. But then you can start to invest in ways to improve it. And I think we're in the middle of that right now in India. Now, how do you accelerate that? Well, you have to have open arms to innovation, to innovative ideas, to creative problem solving that helps solve it. And we have to build bridges for incumbents to move into the future, but we have to keep our eye on the ball, which is the future, and push that forward. And the more welcoming we are to new ideas, the faster you're going to go through that industrialization cycle and move into cleaner cities, greener cities that are, great for us, but of course our children and our children's children.
So, cities like Los Angeles and Atlanta, I mean, the American planning process was all designed for cars. Actually, the American cities, the car companies bought over the railway companies, destroyed them.
Yes.
And the American cities were made for cars and not for people.
Yeah.
I mean, what can we learn so that we can skip that process? I mean, how do we do innovative and sustainable urbanization?
Don't bury train tracks.
Okay.
Right. So I'm from Los Angeles. There's a boulevard, somewhat famous, called Santa Monica Boulevard, and right next to Santa Monica Boulevard, which is probably a 6-lane road, three lanes on each side, is another road called Little Santa Monica. And in between Little Santa Monica and Santa Monica Boulevard is this long strip of trees and shrubbery and all this that they basically used when they buried the tracks that were there. So you could go from the beach in LA all the way to downtown LA on a train. They buried the tracks. So just don't do that. Because there used to be in LA trolleys and mass transit across the entire city. You didn't need a car. But folks who were bringing the car business into LA probably in the 50s and 60s sort of lobbied city governments to probably do the wrong thing.
Okay.
And so we got to watch out for doing the wrong thing when the new thing comes to town.
Okay. So you've interacted with some of our startups in Bangalore, Hyderabad.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of energy and
There is.
dynamism. And,
There is.
what is it that we can learn from the Silicon Valley to accelerate this momentum further?
Well, look, I think what I see in Silicon Valley is you see great executives from India, great entrepreneurs from India that are coming back. They're going back home. And it's a pretty exciting thing. We have a number of Indian engineers and product managers, et cetera, that are transferring to our Bangalore R&D center. And that is the beginning of something very, very beautiful.
Okay.
And so we think of the major hubs of innovation and research technology over the next 20 years, or I see there's going to be like 3 major ones. I call it the 3 Bays. Bay Area, Beijing, and Bangalore.
Okay.
And we're going to be there and investing pretty heavily, not just about having a Bangalore office that supports our operation here in India, I'm talking from an engineering perspective, but a Bangalore engineering office that supports Uber globally.
Okay.
Because the innovation game is going to be here. And so I've seen China change over the last 10 years, and I've seen India change over the last 10 years, and India feels like China 2009 or 2010, sort of in that neck of the woods. And it feels like something really profound is about to happen.
Okay. So you're doing interesting things at your R&D center in Bangalore?
Yes, of course.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, I mean, what is one of the things, what is the future of autonomous cars? And how long is it, as far as India is concerned? When do we seize that opportunity?
Fair enough. Well, look, some of our autonomous work is actually happening in India, which is pretty interesting. And it's happening, some of it's happening in Bangalore, some of it's happening in Hyderabad. We have a facility there as well. So the future of autonomy, I mean, it's sort of like the city story I just told, but on steroids, sort of accelerated and amplified. You get to a situation of no traffic and really efficient use of roads much more quickly. As far as autonomy coming to India, India will be one of the last places to get autonomy. And the main reason is, have you seen how crazy people drive on the roads? It's going to be a long time before my scientists are going to build any kind of software that can drive on Indian roads. But if there are major unexpected advances in artificial intelligence, it will happen sooner in India than you might expect. But it's much harder, it will be much harder to get these cars working on these roads than in places that have a more structured use of them. That said, it's going to happen everywhere. And so the question is it 10 years, 15 years, sort of before it goes full mass market, it's going to be in that neck of the woods.
Okay.
Some people say it could go shorter, but it's not just about when is autonomy going to happen, it's about where. And what I mean by that is if you were in a desert on a one-way road and there's no oncoming traffic and no pedestrians, I could give you an autonomous ride right now. I don't know where the hell you'd be going,
Okay.
but we could do certain things today, and then you say, well, what about an unprotected left-hand turn? Or what about a crosswalk with lots of pedestrians? What about bicycles that are whizzing by? What about lots of different complexities you might see? How many of those do you handle? What street segment are you on? And how well is the software set up to handle that?
Okay.
And so little by little, one street segment at a time in one city and in many cities will start to get better until a point where there's enough demand on the street segments we support that we can actually support vehicles doing it. And the question is how many years and where? And it just depends. And we don't know all the answers yet because there's still things to be invented. We're not all the way there yet.
Yeah. But you came out with this paper on flying cars. What's that all about?
So, look, I think everybody's seen drones, right? We've
Yeah.
seen drones. We've seen how they work. And for kids and adults alike, they're kind of fun. And you get great video from them. But the question is, what about when those drones can carry large amounts of weight? It starts with like an Amazon sort of carrying packages to different places when people order. But it goes to the point where they can carry people. When they can carry enough weight, when the batteries get good enough that they can actually carry people, is when you have a big game changer. And what we did is we wrote a white paper saying, look, we aren't going to make these vehicles. That's not what we do. There are a number of companies that are in the startup space sort of they're starting to build them. And they're starting to figure out the battery situation and how to make them more efficient. They're starting to figure out how to make them quiet so that there's no noise pollution. And when those vehicles are made, we have 50 million monthly active riders that are ready to push a button and have a flying vehicle come down and pick them up and turn a 2-hour commute in Delhi to a 6-minute one. And it's going to be an amazing thing when it happens. Is it a 10-year thing? Probably more along those lines. Yeah. And so we wrote a white paper saying, look, we've got customers that want this. We did some deep research to say what we thought it had to be to work on the Uber system. And then we are basically building a consortium or an ecosystem with all the different players in that space saying, okay, let's get to work.
So tell me, you met Sachin Tendulkar.
Yes, that was amazing.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You love cricket?
I do now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think for any entrepreneur, and maybe anybody really, sitting next to an icon, really somebody who's a champion at the highest level is just an inspiring thing. I think what's interesting here is going from a champion in sport to a champion in life and sort of giving back to his community and maybe just really communities across India is inspiring for anybody who succeeds in any way to the sort of prospect of giving back in some way and how to do that and how to think about that is profound. And that's something that I think that I take away from my time spent with him.
Okay. So tell me, if you were to start all over again, start your innings all over again, and it was not to be Uber, what else would you disrupt?
Oh, I have lots of ideas.
Yeah, tell us all about them.
So it's funny because when I'm in a company, I have I have eyes for only one. And what I mean by that is all of my ideas are all about Uber. It's the love of my life, right? But when I was between companies, between my last one and this one, I have 100 ideas a day, and they're all very interesting.
Okay. You want to share some of them?
Look, there's certain areas, like this might be surprising to people, but one of the big areas that I had really there were 3 of them that I was thinking about, but one of ones that I had seriously thought about was an art idea that I'm not going to talk about. But you can disrupt the art world. It's ready.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to tell you how. Oh, it's very ready. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. You watched any Bollywood movie recently?
I haven't watched a Bollywood movie recently, but I did meet Salman Khan.
Yeah.
And I'm from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
My parents are from Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a new city. If your parents are from Los Angeles, that basically means you're part of the founding team of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Okay? And I have never been to a film studio until I was in Mumbai earlier this week.
Yeah.
And ran into Salman Khan and spent some time and saw how movies were being made. It was amazing. I think, in fact, the information I've gotten is that more content, more film, more movies are being created now in Bollywood than Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, but you should watch his movie called Sultan.
Okay?
You'd love to become a wrestler.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
It's a fantastic movie. Yeah?
He's a strong, big guy.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to wrestle him.
Okay. Okay. So tell us, what's your schedule for the next couple of days?
Well, let's see. I mean, I leave
What
tomorrow.
else are you planning to disrupt? Which other country?
Which other country? Well, I'm going to China from here.
Yeah. Do they still welcome you there?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They're very happy with me these days. And let me see if there's anything interesting I can talk about here.
But have you ever tried landing up in Beijing without a visa?
I don't know if they do the dates backwards like they do here in India. No, I have not tried landing in Beijing without a visa. I am pretty sure that it would be at least as difficult as it was getting into India. That's funny. Well, I guess one of the things that's interesting about my plans, tomorrow I'm still here in Delhi, and I get to be a guest editor for the Times of India.
Okay.
Which is super interesting for me.
Yeah. But you've interacted with some of our startups. What's your view on them?
My view is that there's a dramatic optimism about what's possible, and whether I go to startup hubs or incubators, things like this, we're just seeing a lot of optimistic, capable entrepreneurs. I spoke at IIT Mumbai the last time I was here, which was just a lot of fun. And you can feel that energy, and that's what I was talking about earlier. What happens is like, a lot of folks think of India as like, okay, they see models that work elsewhere and they copy them and then roll them out here in India. But what happens is you get better and better at copying. You start to run out of stuff to copy.
Yeah.
And you start to invent. And I think that's the process that is starting right now that I think is inspiring as an entrepreneur, and part of the reason why I believe that India becomes one of the big sort of R&D hubs of the world in terms of innovation and technology.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we have a lot of young people here, and I thought I'll ask them, a lot of youngsters all over. So I just want to open it up to the floor if they want to ask anything to Travis. Anyone here? Yep, shoot.
I'm Anirban, and my question actually is for Amitabh.
That's great.
Listen, I'm not in the firing line.
I love it. It's your turn, Amitabh.
So my question is that one of the ways in which we could get more cars off the road is if we replicate the US Uber model, where you get private people running Uber services. And my follow-up question is that how do you kind of have regulations adopt to new technologies? The Uber model of US is not replicated in India. You asked Travis about drones, and I don't know what's the regulation around drones. So maybe if you could speak something around that.
Actually, there's so much of disruption taking place that regulations will always be far behind technology. And it's very important that you have the mindset to break away from past regulation and to adapt them to new innovations. And I think Indian political system and Indian bureaucratic system and administrative system must become far more open, far more receptive to new radical changes that are taking place across the world. And unless and until we don't make radical changes in our regulation system, it'll be very difficult to keep pace with innovation. I mean, path-breaking innovations like this, you need to make our rules, regulations as disruptive as possible so that disruptions can take place in India. It's very, very important. I mean, if you start putting price controls below the line, above the line, it'll be very difficult for innovations to grow and prosper in India. And it's a very, very important thing that the mindsets must change. Yeah, please.
I just have 3 very quick ideas for you. Would you consider 3 verticals: Uber Eve, which is women drivers ferrying only women passengers given safety issues in some of our cities? Number 2, do something for people with pets. A lot of the Uber cars, so create a brand called Uber Woof. And the third is do something for specially abled people. The London black cabs still have ramps which they kind of open out. So Uber Eve, Uber Woof, and Uber Able, and we're not even charging you any money. And finally, I wish Uber was around many years ago. Salman wouldn't be in the problems that he is.
So, we have sort of a commitment which we call, it's basically about getting 1 million women drivers on the road. And by 2020 is the commitment. And part of making that kind of system work, I think there's 2 pieces. One, there are different laws in different countries, different cities, etc., about being able to offer a service that's based on a gender, right, or based on ethnicity, things like that. There are places where that kind of service can work, and it's an interesting concept. But you have to have enough female drivers on the system to make that system work. I think, in my conversations with women, that it's something that's interesting to a number of them. And so if there's enough supply, enough women who are driving, then that can work. But if there aren't enough, you might have women customers, female customers, that are waiting too long on the street trying to get a ride, and that's not good either. In the meantime, we're also, of course, making the system safer and safer every day. So we have research around how, remember, every driver has a phone mounted, and you can determine, if you're running an app on this phone, you can determine how it's moving through space, and so you can see, is the phone, how the phone is moving, how's it accelerating, decelerating, turning, etc. Is this a car that's being driven safely or not? There's a whole bunch of things we do before the trip and after the trip. Ratings, sharing a trip with family, something that's taken off here in India. So let's do everything we can from a technology perspective to make Uber the safest place in a city. And that even includes interesting ideas like what you mentioned. And then the second one is Uber Woof, right? So Uber for dogs. And that's something that is interesting as well. And that's something we could probably do in short order. And it's something like, that's something that I'd love to have as well. So that's number 2. And then number 3, in a number of cities, and I'd have to check in which specific cities here in India, but a number of cities around the world, we do handicap and disabled vehicles and provide access to them. And in many cities, we're doing way, way, way more than what's going on in the taxi. And this goes back, our number 1 cultural value at Uber is celebrate the city. And it's about making the system efficient so we can serve the city in the ways that I've described, but it's also, when we succeed in the city, finding ways to give back and celebrating all the communities that are in the city. So we're all about it. We do a lot of the disabled vehicles in a lot of cities, but we can always do more, and we continue to do more.
Hi.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Travis, my name is Priyank Narayan. I'm from Ashoka University. We run probably the only smart city accelerator here in India. One of the questions that often gets asked is that data is going to be the king. I mean, whoever owns data. There is a lot of data that you collect, which gets collected as a part of the process. What are some of the good uses to that data that you plan to put?
Yeah.
And how can that data be actually collectively shared by a lot of other people or other entrepreneurs to make more productive use of that?
Yeah, so we have a team at Uber that's solely dedicated to figuring out ways to share data with cities, right? City governments, groups that are really sort of pro-transit, pro-mass transit, like what kinds of data can we provide that just helps these, helps other applications do more interesting, more and different and interesting things for a city. So an example would be if we see how these phones are moving through the world and therefore knowing how cars are moving, we know where the roads are smooth and we know where the roads are not. I'm just going to cover so I can see you. And that's really interesting because you have city planners, you have people that work on city infrastructure that are trying to prioritize their investments. And you couple that with traffic data, another thing that we have. We know what traffic looks like across a city all times of day and night, everywhere in that city. And so you couple like, hey, where are the roads in rough shape? How are those roads being used? Where's the traffic? Where is it not? There's a lot of interesting things that can happen from a city planning perspective as well as an infrastructure perspective that could be super helpful. And we want to find ways to just give that back. I mean, it seems like a great opportunity. So you're going to start seeing a lot of that kind of stuff from us in 2017. We have literally a dedicated team towards this, and they're going to start rolling out a lot of interesting features and capabilities in the coming months and years to come.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Surabhi from Economic Times. Hi. You've had several run-ins with regulators all over the world, including in India. But I just wanted to understand that, what is the strategy of, for example, San Francisco, you launched self-driving cars and they were pulled out the very next day. So what is the strategy of launching something first and then letting regulations catch up and having these various run-ins instead of first checking with regulators on whether something is possible and then going ahead with it?
Well, look, remember, the first thing I'm going to say is we rolled out self-driving cars in San Francisco today, and we're following all the rules. But that doesn't mean that the regulators aren't sort of trying to wrestle with what does that mean for them and are there new rules that they need to figure out. But it goes back even in San Francisco. There was a cease and desist 3 months after we launched. And all we were doing was connecting riders with commercially licensed, commercially insured, commercially regulated vehicles. So instead of taking a phone call, they could just push an app. We got a cease and desist, but that cease and desist never saw a courtroom because we weren't doing anything wrong. And so we have to ultimately be able to decipher between what the headlines are saying and maybe suggesting and what is real. But what's happening right now in San Francisco with our self-driving cars hitting the roads and taking passengers around, we're following all the rules. And I think regulators get a little anxious when they feel like there should be more rules that they haven't quite gotten out yet. And we just need to make sure they're not slowing down the future. The future could be so bright and happen in such a positive and optimistic way. It's unfortunate that we often find ourselves seeing resistance that's not oriented around progress. But ultimately, I believe the rules do bend towards the people and towards progress. And I think Uber, in many ways around the world, has shown that.
Travis, hi. Pranav
one last question.
Pranav here from the Indian Express. Although different markets, India and China, what would be your key learnings from your experience there, considering, in India also you are competing against a strong local player, and so was the case in China. So just a couple of key learnings that you would have had from your China experience.
Look, I think both, so India and China are both very, very big markets, which means those markets on their own can support local competitors that are focused on that market. And what it means is the only way to compete is you have to become local yourself, right? So I said this earlier, our operations here in India are run by the sons and daughters of India. It is a local operation. And building technology, of course, that can be used as a platform, but when you operate or roll out this transportation system of sorts, this transportation technology of sorts, it has to be empathetic to the local imperative. And there's so many things that are local here to India that are different here than anywhere else in the world. Like what an interesting thing that's happened in the last month with demonetization, right? We first were 100% credit card, but realized we had to go cash. This is before demonetization. We had to go cash. Just prior to demonetization, we were 80% cash and 20% digital payments. Post demonetization, we are 50% cash, 50% digital payments. That's just local. And having solutions that can serve folks when demonetization happens is just part of being local. And you can't do that without being on the ground. So we were always local from the beginning, but when we went to India and we went to China, we had to take that to a next level. And being local means different things in different places. It can be about safety. It can be about financial, like how you pay for rides. It can be about phones and what kinds of phones are being used, and then how does that affect the service. It can be about maps. There's a whole stack of technology that gets affected, and you have to be very empathetic about it, and then you have to, in some ways, creatively problem solve, and in some ways, forget about what you thought you knew and start over again. I think we've done a lot of that in India, and that is part of the entrepreneurial journey, and it's part of what's exciting about coming to India and serving India, is starting over and being Indian. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's an experience that I cherish.
Okay.
Last question.
No, I think, okay, one last question from the lady.
Hi, I'm Ruchi Bhatia from ET now. My two questions, if you could elaborate on the...
I get to pick which one.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick
Okay,
which
then
one.
I'll ask you the more important one.
Oh, prioritization.
Because Bhavish Aggarwal, you did mention that competition is very important for you. It also helps the customers at the end of the day. But Bhavish Aggarwal recently did say that this is a battle that is being fought on capital and not innovation, and this is not a level playing field. What do you really have to say on that? Your thoughts on the issue of capital dumping?
Look, I think first is that I think our competitor here in India has raised an enormous amount of capital. We have operations globally. We've raised capital for our global operations. At the end of the day, both companies have taken so much investment that a vast majority of my company, as well as a vast majority of Ola, is foreign owned. Now, if it's about whether I personally am Indian, and Amitabh, we need to talk about this. I will apply to be a citizen of India if this is what gets us over the hump. And but
do that pretty fast, huh?
Yeah, fair enough. Understood. And so I think at the end of the day, it's about the innovation that's being brought to the table, and it's about how we're serving riders and drivers. Are we doing that optimistically? Are we bringing efficiency and bringing sort of positive outcomes for riders and drivers? And I think we are, and we're doing it, I believe, in an enduring way. And so, though I don't agree with all the comments out there, I think at the end of the day, we respect Ola's competing with Ola and how they compete. We feel that we've competed well we've competed well and fairly, and we'll continue to do so. And I think you'll see in the coming year, 2 years, just because of the size. When you get big,
Yeah.
when you get big, you have to be break even or profitable, because the kinds of subsidies that you can that get put into a market when you get big are just not meaningful because you're just too big. So what you'll see from both companies over the coming months and years is it's just going to get to break even or profitable because it has to. And trust me, I look forward to it. My last company was a very small startup, and I sort of cut my teeth as an entrepreneur as a very disciplined, very gritty, very austere business builder, and I can't wait to get to that place here in India.
So, Travis, let me ask you, I mean, you operate in 500 cities across the world. Which city in the world has the worst regulation?
Oh, I've got a few of them.
Yeah.
So let's see. So right now we're not really operating in Germany.
Yeah.
We're not operating in Spain.
Yeah.
And I'd say Seoul and Tokyo are also pretty difficult to operate in. And there's, for different reasons, there's a law in Germany called the return to garage law, which means that if you call for a car and let's say it's 3 minutes away, by law, that car has to go back to its garage, park, turn around, and come back to you. Right? Now, why would a law like that exist? A law like that exists to basically make sure that taxis do not have any viable competition. Right? For example. Or let's say in Seoul, Uber is 100% legal in Seoul. As long as the passenger in the car is not Korean.
Okay.
So if you're a foreigner and you go to Seoul, you can get a comfortable, high-quality ride. But if you are a local, you get the taxi industry. And again, this is how they protect the industry for those customers.
Okay. So Germany is terrible. Korea is horrid.
I said they have some laws that are interesting.
Okay. Okay. So tell me, which city has the best regulation for an innovative company like yours?
It's interesting. The smoothest process for embracing the kind of innovation that we see, that we represent, and I can't speak to regulations that have happened since, but our entire time in China, we did not see any significant resistance towards our kind of progress.
Okay.
And that was pretty remarkable, I think surprising to a lot of folks. There's been some proposed regulations since then, and I'm not as up to speed because we're not operating there anymore because our China operation merged with our competitors. But they really embraced progress, and it was something I was surprised by, but something that we grew incredibly fast because of it.
Okay. Now, if you were to look at the next 15 years, what are the 3 big disruptions that will change the world?
I mean, you remember how I said I only have eyes for one? Like Uber is the love of my life, and all I know is her.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to think about the other disruptions outside of what we do because that's all I think about all day long.
But you meet a lot of young startups.
I do.
You're a man of ideas.
I was.
Yeah.
Now all my ideas are Uber ideas.
Okay.
I think what we generally should expect, though, is that a lot of technology, a lot of innovation is going to go from just a purely bits world, where maybe I have an app and it's a game, or maybe I have an app and it's a communications tool, to a bits and atoms perspective, where I'm using bits, but they affect the physical world. And in many ways, that is where Uber is. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting technology, a lot of interesting innovation that gets into that.
Okay.
And we're going to be a big part of that. We think in many ways when you start thinking about autonomous, that Uber really starts to enter we really start to become a robotics company.
Okay.
But I think there's a lot of interesting innovation in that area, and I'd be pretty excited about what's coming in the next 10 or 15 years.
Okay. Thank you. Wonderful
Thank you.
chatting with
Good to
you.
see
Wonderful.
you.
Lovely. Great pleasure.
1 hour of Travis Kalanick, and honestly, I couldn't get enough of him because, you know, there was so much of candor in that conversation, everything controversial, but I think the biggest headline came to ET Now's question on Ola's charges of capital dumping. Travis Kalanick saying that, you know, even the competition has raised capital, so if this is about being Indian, then he's ready to apply for citizenship. But on that note, we come to the end of this special edition of ET Now Startup Central. We hope you found that conversation insightful. Thank you for watching and keep it with ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.